One. Hello, this is Vegan Synergy Meditation meeting number 9. I am Dharmendra Gordon. I'll be the facilitator tonight. And everybody, welcome. And wherever you are just now, just allow yourself the opportunity to just unplug from the pace and the race of the world we've all been participating in today and giving it our all. And just kind of find where you're at and kind of fall into your own space right now and just relax into your present moment wherever you find yourself, and just let your aura kind of stretch out and take up the space you're in, and just sort of receive whatever's in your environment: sound, feelings, smells, sensations, whatever. And as you do so, just lightly brush through the events of your day and notice anything that might be outstanding, that might deserve your attention right now one last time, to just maybe give it a little bit of your juice if that's needed, if anything was incomplete or not done to your satisfaction, or feels like anything other than whatever you feel is acceptable, and just allow that to be right now. And as you do so and you bring your awareness into that, just let that dissolve for now back into wherever that event, that energy came from, so that you arrive even more into your present space. And as you do so, you can just sense where your heart's at and what you care about and what you believe in and what you're standing behind, and how's that going for you in your life, and how much of that are you engaged in and invested in, and how you feel about it. Bringing your gifts into the world, and just kind of notice how that's touching everybody in your life. At the same time, what kind of reflection are you getting from people that are being touched by it, and how does that touch you? And are you also getting the benefit of other people's gifts to be shared with you as you share your gifts with others? Or do you find yourself mostly giving, or mostly receiving, or any combination thereof? And if you find yourself taking the lead a lot and being a person who gives guidance through your gifts, just sort of notice how that feels and how that's going for you. And where you'd maybe like it to go more, and let go of maybe where you'd like it to go less. And also maybe allow yourself to open whatever intuition or insight you have about what it means to you, and how important it is to you, and what it stands for, and what kind of a purpose it's unraveling in your life for you. And as you step fully into that, and even beyond that, into the future you most desire, where you're already in that place where everything that you wish to have accomplished in your life back there in that present moment is already accomplished, and you find yourself in a place that's includes this place, but it's also a bigger place. It's a vaster place. It's a grander place where you're more in touch with and living almost naturally with your siddhas, with your supernatural abilities, having developed them over so many years, that now it's just natural for you to express your siddhas with other beings and touch them in very deep ways. And in that space, feeling very connected to your source, to your center, to your present moment, and your influence and your positive benevolent touch spreading over a wide range of people, and they're being grateful for you in their life, grateful for having met you, and grateful for opening and receiving whatever it is you have to share. And also themselves learning through their connection with you and others about their gifts and their connection to Source. And just for a moment, just rest in your own Source and acknowledge where all of the great goodness comes from to all of us. Wherever you connect with that in yourself, just find that place in yourself and just be with that goodness, that place we all come from that allows everything to be and move together in harmony in existence and attain to whatever it is it's destined to attain. And just enjoy the fact that it's all, even though it's very deep and beautiful, it's also very ordinary and very personal, and very human and down to earth, this path we all share in our hearts together. And slowly helping the consciousness of the planet to rise up and start to do things in ways that respect all of life and respect each other and respect the way we do business and play and rest together. And then just allow yourself with all that to absorb all that back into yourself and come back into the space you're in. And take a deep breath and just open your eyes and welcome again to everybody. And thank you for being here and choosing to be here tonight to work this magical process. So I wanted to kind of give a few themes to our work that I've found over the years. It's kind of, I want to say flesh it out a little bit, but I don't like the word fleshing it out because that has connotations of animal and other things. So I'll just say to put a bit of foliage on that tree. I guess you could say, dress it up a little. So just when it comes to the these are some visual images and some spatial exercises that are useful. I've found over the years in working with. We'll start with the shadow, but when I work with the shadow, I always see it stretching from my heart directly to the left and the right, and I call that the horizontal embrace. And so whenever I go into my shadow, it starts with a kind of small golden sphere, maybe about a foot in diameter, that surrounds my heart. And that gold is of truth. And so there's a golden sphere of truth, and that's always where I bring any shadow in when I'm working with a shadow. And I always bring it in along these lines that stretch out straight from my heart, like you could imagine your arms stretching out to the left and the right, and maybe embracing the whole earth. And the field that you're embracing is all of humanity, because we all have to go through shadow work together as humans on this planet. And for me, it's always about how big is my embrace? How much of that suffering can I hold and embrace and give space to? Because what I have discovered, especially through veganism, is that the more we can open to that suffering, the more effective we can become, and the more we can become aware of what kind of suffering is happening on the planet. And primarily on on this horizontal stretch to the left and the right that comes and centers into this golden sphere of truth in my heart. It's about the reach of my embrace, and it's the embrace of humanity. So those are some terms that I use. And also another term I use is stillness. Stillness is very important. The more still I can be, the more I can embrace that, embrace the suffering, and ultimately that suffering turns into grace. And by embracing that suffering, it means that I reach out and touch my fellow man empathically. I put myself in their position. I'm not above them, and so I can always take in. And okay, Benjamin, nice to have seen you. Hope you check the video out later. There's going to be some neat stuff here. I'm going to be sharing about these things that's going to make it more interesting and a little bit more meaning to what we're doing in these stages. Lovely to see you.
Sounds good. Love you all.
Love you too. And so that's kind of how and as we move into the process tonight, we'll actually apply it, because we're gonna use it in just that way. And then as I step in to the gift, I go into straight up and down. So, and then the sphere grows from this little foot sphere surrounding my heart of gold to a blue sphere that I'm immersed in. That's kind of like the size of my aura, which would be like maybe about 8 feet all around me. So a couple feet beyond the reach of my arms in all directions of a sphere. And that's the sphere of the gift, of course. And those who come into the embrace of my aura can, come into direct contact with that gift. And it's all about how well I know myself. Whereas the golden sphere is truth, where I realize we all share, a portion of the suffering as human beings. When it comes to the gift and knowing myself, it has to do with how high I can rise in my consciousness and touch, I guess you could say, higher states of consciousness, but at the same time to balance it with how deeply can I become involved in the world and apply it. So the higher I rise, the more deeper I want to get into the world and spread it out around me. And especially, and in this case, it's all about all of life, not humanity's the horizontal left to right embrace. All of life is the vertical, and that includes higher beings than me and also animals and everything else below me, where whatever I can reach when I go meta to the normal space I'm in and start including more and more understanding, I want to be able to take it into what's down beneath me, into the worlds below me, including animals and the climate and everything I'm involved in life. And and the key word there is about movement. It's about following my own unique movement. When I'm embracing the suffering, I'm still. It's very important to be still, because that's when it can come into the sphere of truth and transform. And then it connects with the up and down. I guess you could call it almost like a tube, or a tube that runs right through the center of this blue sphere, which is the sphere of knowing myself and my gifts, and how I move those gifts from when I discover things, issues in the world, I offer it up to the higher intelligence, and then I get insights and I apply that back down into the world. So that's the way the gift orients, and also that it's a bigger sphere than the shadow, which I keep right around my heart, because my heart can transform anything. And that's the gift. And then as I move into the siddha, the supernatural ability, the sphere becomes about 50 foot around me. So it's about 100 foot in diameter or 50 foot radius. It's very big, because in order to handle a siddha, you need a lot of space. And that's how much you can extend yourself out and literally out into your environment around you. That becomes your immediate environment around you, 50 feet all around you, above you, below you, and that size of a sphere. And it's a sphere of diamond clarity. And it's also a sphere of brilliance where synthesis occurs, because it's in synthesis when things start moving together in a higher harmony that the siddhas start to open up. And the orientation is straight out into my future and straight back into my past. And it's an endless development. If I tune into my future in that direction, it's not about going higher. It's about how much I evolve as I move into my future. How much do I, as a being, become? Start to transcend my. Eventually, I'm going to transcend this human form, and I'm going to become whatever's after that. But that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow to the point where eventually, I assume I will become a kind of being whose aura is this 50-foot sphere, which now is just a way I allow myself to get in touch with the siddha or the supernatural abilities of my presence, but ultimately will become my natural aura. So there's obviously a lot of development occurring down the road of my future. And it's also connected to my past because we all started from a tiny little cell. And from that tiny little cell, we grew into every different form of life until we reached the human form, and then we grew to be human. So the one of the things that's important about siddhas is the willingness to love and be loved, because we had to be loved in order to grow from a cell to a human being. But then, as to go beyond being human, it's how much are we willing to love, because we definitely were given a tremendous amount of love over time since the beginning of life, from a single cell to evolve into being a human being. There's obviously a lot of love there, because what we as human beings can do is obviously, just the fact that we have trillions of cells in us, we're obviously some kind of entity that's like a universe of cells. So those are some things I hope that I can offer. And of course, there's much more than that, but this is just kind of like one step at a time. So we have our shadow left and right, we have our gift up and down, and we have our siddha, future and past. And you can also think of the shadow as the balance between male and female, because that's also a theme of left and right. And you can also think of the gift as above, so below. That's also a theme of what's above and what's below, or what's higher and what's lower. When I move into the future, I tend to think more of greater, and when I tend to move in the past, I tend to think of lesser, but not in a judgmental way, just in a scientific way. Something is less capable or more capable as I move in those directions. So I hope that proves useful to you guys. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw up I'm going to share the siddha shadow gift siddha chart, and tonight what we're going to do is each of us just take a look at the shadow, and it's not about our personal shadow tonight. It's about the shadow that's out there in the collective, that I guess you could say whatever, and for whatever reason, I don't care what the reason is, whether it's impinging upon you or it's something you want to help heal, or whatever it is. It can either be a receptive mode or a creative mode, or you can even just be neutral to it, and maybe it's a shadow you'd really rather not deal with, but maybe this is a good time to do it because you can find out why you don't want to deal with it. But it's about the collective. We're going to look at humanity as a whole and the state that we all share on the planet right now, and whatever shadow hits you the most. We're going to bring it up like that tonight instead of our own personal shadows, because I feel we're all at a point now where we're starting to understand what it means to transform our shadows into our powers and allow them to ground in our bodies. So if that's the case, we need to open it up, because there's always more shadow to work with. If it's not our own, then we start to learn to take on what's called intentional suffering, which is a very deep principle in the spiritual path, in order to evolve. So let me share that so that everybody can have can everybody see that? For some reason, I haven't got me up there. I don't know why. That's weird.
Yeah, we can see it.
I won't be able to see it. I hope I can. Maybe you can.
Do you, yeah, you would have to go into Climate Healers in Basecamp and find the, you know what I'll do just for the I can go through and name all the shadows. If one hits you, just remember it, okay? There's 64 of there's 64 of them, and they're basically our 64 genetic codons that correspond to the I Ching in the Chinese system of I Ching. There's 64 hexagrams that science has discovered also and validated that are 64 genes, and they bring out different qualities at the shadow level, which is subconscious, the gift level, which is conscious, and the siddha level, which is superconscious. And they also have a certain duration of time in the year, just like the astrology signs, but these are only like about 5 3/4 days each, because you have to go through 64 of them in this 365 days of the year. And the Chinese have known about this for like 5,000 years. So they've been using this way of seeing how different moods of the year are passed through in these hexagrams. Anyway, the shadows are entropy, dislocation, chaos, intolerance, impatience, conflict, division, mediocrity, inertia, self-obsession, obscurity, vanity, discord, compromise, dullness, indifference, opinion, judgment, codependence, superficiality, control, dishonor, complexity, addiction, constriction, pride, selfishness, purposelessness, half-heartedness, desire, arrogance, and failure. Now, Patricia, I'll ask you at this point, that's the first 32. Did anything hit you there, or do we need to say more?
A number of them hit me, so that's fine.
Okay, so one of those you can use for tonight, and I'll just give us all a moment more to kind of look over the shadows. And oh, by the way, tonight too, you don't have to keep it in a sequence. In other words, you don't have to keep the same number for the shadow, the gift, or the siddha as we go through the whole process tonight. You can choose a shadow from anywhere, a gift from anywhere, and a siddha from anywhere. So we're going totally open tonight and leaving it to your intuitions. We're not following any strict sequence. So I just looked and saw which one I would like, so I'm clear about that. So if people could just maybe give me a thumbs up when they've got theirs, and then I'll know when we're ready to close this out and just start working it. But take your time. I'll give us a few minutes to really look and see what one might be. Be something you have concern about in terms of humanity's expression of this particular shadow.
And Dharmendra,
yes,
you only want us to focus on the 32 on the left, not the
no,
other.
all 64. I was just naming them for Patricia because she didn't have a visual on this, so I was trying to I was giving her an auditory sample of the first 32 and asking her if we need to go through the other 32 for her to get a beat on one she could use. So no, all 64, please. Whichever one out of the 64 shadows, please take your pick. So anyway, as you guys are looking, that's please carry on. I'll just go ahead and start. The one that grabbed my attention tonight was the 50th shadow of corruption, which for me, seems to be a very salient point right now in not just our government, but it seems like the state of government period on the planet seems to be, I'm going to use another shadow, oppressed with corruption. And oppressing everything around it with its corruption. And it just seems that everything has become rusted from the inside out. And I mean that obviously metaphorically. And it really challenges me every day to remember my aim and what I'm here for, and that my point is to bring more good and truth and beauty into the world, irregardless of the amount of corruption that is erupting on all sides through our government and many other governments, quite frankly, around the world, and that is seriously oppressing us and kind of just dominating our lives with the expectations they're imposing upon us, these and the powers that be, that basically are the ones that create these governments that are really just puppets for, the super rich corporations and the world banks and all those who control the strings of the resources on the planet. And it kind of concerns me because I see so much inertia out there in the general populace and indifference and just and selfishness, so much selfishness in people. And just taking a blind eye to all of it, and just staying distracted with their small little immediate world, and being dishonest with themselves, and the psychosis that's slowly taking over the ruling class in a really freaky sort of way. And I guess just how forgetful people are of themselves and of the world they're living in, and you know, hanging on every last bit to their immediate forms of entertainment and distraction, and having very little tolerance for their neighbors, and try and have any understanding of the amount of suffering that's going on the planet and what's happening to the climate as a result. So that's kind of you know, I'm kind of opening it up so we can sort of really begin to give a little voice maybe to what we're all seeing out there in the world. I obviously went through a whole bunch of shadows. I wasn't planning on doing that, but they just seem to avail themselves of the train of thought I was using. So you can do that also. I mean, you can start with one like I did, corruption, and then it just kind of springboarded me into a whole sequence of shadows that were there. So is it okay to distract everybody, or do we need it, or shall I put it down? Otherwise, I'll leave it up so you can go through them like I did. If a bunch of them hit you, you kind of just freestyle through it. I found that kind of useful. Whoever, I'm done at this point. I'm going to go on mute.
Well, I'm willing to go next. This is Patricia.
Please do.
Well, the ones that jumped out at me were started with pride, and so much of my experience with working with groups is that people's egos get involved, which I think is pride, and something that I'm feeling so grateful about getting involved with Vegan World 2026, I want to reassure everyone is, or, you know, I've experienced people as not being prideful, as really, as in a Christian term, preferring each other, and really not easily taking offense, and just being really, I don't know, it's just beautiful. It's just so in a way, I don't know if that's a siddha or if that is it's just a celebration of the contrast, because at the same time as I'm having these really encouraging and uplifting experiences, I'm seeing with other people even now that they don't seem to be wanting to be respectful of me. And then if I go back into the past, just to see people how they just are kind of seizing power, treating others disrespectfully in relationships, which would, I think, comes from pride of thinking, or and arrogance jumped out too, where it's like, I can treat you, the attitude, I can treat you any way I want to. I'm better than you. I can just ask you to treat me with respect, but I don't have to treat you with respect. And I just see this in so many of the social justice movements that I've worked with for the past 45 years or so. And actually starting out with the president of the class when I was about 16, who told me, you can't put the refreshment, I was in the refreshment committee, and he said, you can't put the cups that way. I said, can I just have a little bit of power? Can I make one decision myself? He said, no. I yelled at him, I got fired. That was my beginning of somebody, being hurt by pride. So I'll just stop now, and I just appreciate everybody listening.
Thank you, Patricia. That was well done. One thing I'll say just at this point, when we do get through each one of us sharing our shadow, then I'm going to apply some of the new stuff I shared with you guys to demonstrate how to shift into, as we'll shift from the shadow to the gift. So for now, if we can just remember as much as possible, it's okay to mention gifts and siddhis while you're in the shadow, but to try and remember to stay with the theme of the shadow in relation to the collective as you are experiencing it. I'm going to unmute.
Hi everyone. So the shadow that jumped out at me was indifference, because I feel like among a lot of people my age, friends of mine, my roommates, coworkers, there seems to be a lot of indifference just around the state of the world, and this hesitation as to whether or not things can be changed for the better, or if they're even worth being changed. I just noticed this with people where when I want to enter into a discussion or the topic comes up around just the state of things for humanity and for the planet, this sort of apathy kind of rolls in, and it just hangs like a fog in the room until someone changes the conversation to something that everyone can be a little bit more certain of. There's something about the indifference just stifles any feeling. I don't know, indifference, it kind of wraps in with purposelessness, where we're kind of indifferent towards the state of the world. We tell ourselves, I'm kind of indifferent about whether or not things can change for the better, or if I can do something. And then we're all kind of wrapped up in this quest for purpose, constantly seeking this purpose outside of ourselves. And whether it's through working all the time or making lots of money, and it just hurts me, or it kind of just I feel it on me, just this feeling of lack that people have surrounding just human problems, kind of feeling like it's just outside of their realm of efficacy, it's just heavy, kind of. It hurts to bear witness to.
Brilliantly well said. Thank you. It really put me in the driver's seat with you to hear all that. I felt like I was right there experiencing it with you. A very accurate description of probably life on planet Earth in certain peer groups and age groups. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Jamin here. Really appreciate everyone's sharing. Patricia, Evan. And I also tapped into indifference and also self-obsession. And this is kind of at the level of humanity. Humanity, both as a species and at the individual and all levels in between, family, group, community, nation. There's this self-obsession with ourselves and what we want, and then basically indifference, as Evan was saying, to other forms of life, Mother Earth as a whole, etc. And even, you know, what legacy we're going to leave behind. It's like, who cares? We're just here to self-aggrandize. And so I just wanted to share that. And I really appreciate, Dharmendra, that you're opening it up beyond the personal shadow and more the shadow of what we're experiencing in the world or at the level of all of humanity. That's really super helpful. I love this. Going on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Jamin. I thought that was a very brilliantly and how should I say, a lot of information in what you just shared that gave a very panoramic view of quite a large sweep of what's happening here on planet Earth. So thank you for that. And yeah, it just occurred to me that once you get the hang of what a shadow is about, I think it's really helpful in the world we're in right now to become very aware of where we are, because there is just so much shadow. And the minute we can find our place in that, then we can start to possibly have some effect and have some leverage on it. Just by the way we describe our experience of it, it puts us on the map in relation to it. And then, of course, as we go on with the exercise tonight, we'll find ways to bring ourselves into it in heroic and heroine-like ways. But anyway, on mute.
Hi, everyone. Melissa here. I'm smiling on the outside, but I am crying on the inside. And my word is oppression. I am so deeply concerned about the lack of love on our planet. The lack of love of human beings for themselves, for all other human beings, and for all other forms of life. I am concerned about the oppression that we are witnessing, whether it's creating borders, walls, keeping people out, destruction of the biosphere, of natural habitats, and of all other species that we share this planet with. I am deeply concerned about this oppression that's happening on the planet. And it seems to be getting darker and darker and darker and darker.
Well, even though we are all expressing some pretty grim realities about the world we're living in, I think it's a very beautiful sharing that's happening. I'm glad there was a hit to open the field and include all of humanity, and because it seems to be really making it a much richer discussion. So, and I'm really impressed and honored by everybody's sharing, because there's just a lot of powerful discriminative awareness applied intelligently in evidence. So I really appreciate the sharing. Thank you.
And I just wanted, Patricia's here, I want to thank you for bringing up the topic. And introducing it in such a beautiful way. So thank you.
If I can just go off of some of what Melissa was saying about this oppression and about the lack of love, because that's something too that kind of has stuck out to me. Is there's apprehension among people, and almost like there's self-oppression as well that we do, where we're afraid of, we're almost afraid to love, because when you love something, you can get hurt by it. But then it's wrapped up in that, like, to be afraid of it all is like to be afraid of potentially losing something, and, something that you would love. You know, it's like the only thing that makes me really scared is when I feel like I'm going to lose something that I love. So it's weird that, I don't know, we're in this just messed up sort of game with ourselves where we're afraid to love passionately and openly and open our hearts because we're afraid to hurt ourselves. But it's like we're hurting ourselves in that process of blinding ourselves. That was all. Thank you.
So I think I want to invite, but without any rush. So I'm okay to be in silence for a while. And I know, Nolan, for you, many times you're a very, very deep and profound and insightful thinker. And sometimes it takes you time. And so I am aware of that because I have interacted with you enough to know that. So I am perfectly happy with remaining silent until you feel like sharing. Of course, obviously you're free not to, but I always think whatever you contribute adds a lot of richness to the conversation. And the only reason I'm saying all this is because everybody else has already shared. And so I'm at ease, and you can take a moment. But I would love to hear what you have to say too.
I've had a hard time pinning it down to any one term, really, but some of the things that have occurred to me, there's something to do with qualification in our society that I think ends up limiting a lot of people mentally from pushing themselves to occupy some position that on paper they're not supposed to be able to occupy. And then there's lots of people that they get the qualification, but I think a lot of them, once they go through this process, sometimes that process itself has like killed something in them, or I don't know how else to say that it really freaks me out that some people can go through these processes and climb the ranks of organizations and lose all this energy playing those games just to get to a position where now people finally give them the energy that we need to give them in order to do whatever it is. But and with I think a strange thing we're all facing now is it's becoming very obvious that the internet is this incredibly powerful, freeing tool if used correctly, and it really threatens all of those organizations and processes that are stamping people as qualified, because anybody can learn anything and connect with anyone in a way that they never could before. So all those, I think those structures are, and the people involved, I guess inside and outside of those structures, are particularly challenged in this time where these boundaries are being dissolved, but we're still trying to hold them together in like our collective mind. And that causes a lot of pain that I actually don't think has always been caused in the past. I think that some of the boundaries had their usefulness and their time, but at some, I think we're, yeah, I don't know. That's, I think that's about it.
Well, that was very eloquently developed and delivered, and I love the way that you just kind of come in wherever your thought is, and then it just kind of fades out wherever it fades out. And I love that. I mean, there doesn't always have to be this perfect beginning and ending. I mean, life is more like that, where it all of a sudden says something, and then all of a sudden it's just, okay, that's done. And in between there was this beautiful little dance, and a lot of really cool understanding came through. So much appreciated, Nolan, and thank you. So I am going to drop into a little bit of my mastery of internal martial arts. I should say prowess. I don't want to say mastery. Prowess of internal martial arts, and share some things about the way energy flows through our energy body, which is actually known as the etheric body. It's the counterpart of our physical body. And it's through lots of years of martial arts, or internal arts, especially like Tai Chi and that kind of thing, you eventually realize that we not only do we have a physical body, but we have an energy field that moves in very specific ways that creates very specific results if we do it over long periods of time. And this is in relation directly to the shadow axis, left and right. Actually, we have I'm not sure how much everybody's familiar with acupuncture and the internal organ meridians. We have 12 of them, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm only mentioning them because there's what are called 8 extraordinary vessels, which are also lines of a sequence of points that link all those 12 meridians together. They're called extraordinary vessels. And they're directly related to these axes and these shadows, gifts, and siddhas in a very unique way. And this is my own discovery and something I've been developing over just in the last recent years, because it works quite amazingly. But basically, if we take all those shadows right now, all of us that we've been working with, and as we stretch our arms out to the left and right and imagine ourselves embracing humanity, and just let all of those shadows that relate to whatever humans that it applies to just come rushing into that sphere, the center of our heart of truth. And we're always safe with truth. Truth doesn't need protection because truth is what is. So it certainly can't harm us. So we're going to take and absorb all of that, whatever shadows we've opened to tonight, and just allow that sum total of that in our reach around the planet through every human being it touches in those ways to come into our heart in that shadow of gold. And then there are 2 channels that we can work with, and they're called the central and governing channels. And if you take a line and start at the base of your spine and go straight up your spine, straight over the center of your head, straight down the front of your face, and straight down your body, and down underneath you and back to the base of your spine, that's where those 2 channels run. And they just run in a circle around you. And you can either go like with an in breath, you can go up the back, and with an out breath, you can go down the front or the other way, or you can even go in the reverse direction, whatever feels comfortable for you. But basically, this gold sphere in the center where we're holding this truth is like the axis around which this wheel we can turn, this central and governing channels that go around the center of us like that. And if we take a few breaths with that, what actually starts to happen is we literally, and we have to be very still at the center where the truth is, because the emphasis is on stillness when it comes to the shadow, where we're holding the energy of the shadow within this golden sphere of truth. And as we start to breathe and allow it slowly, and the breath is just to get it moving. Once it's moving, you don't even need the breath anymore. You just need your intent, and it becomes literally like a wheel of energy that's absolutely still at the center where the golden sphere is. What you'll notice is that energy, that shadow energy, will start to slowly change its quality. And I won't say exactly how, because I don't want to lead anybody's experience. I'll just say it starts to transform in some sort of way when you hold it there in the center and let this energy start to circulate around your body, directly around the center line of your body, exactly as I described it, up from the back and down the front, or in the reverse, whatever works for you. And then what we're going to do in order to move into the gift space is we're going to change the orientation now. We can allow that movement to keep happening. We're going to change the orientation to up and down vertical. Vertical straight up and down through the top of your head, and straight down through the bottom of your spine down into the earth. So we're connecting straight down to the earth below us and straight up into however high you want to go, the sun, the galaxy, the center of the universe, however you want to call it. That's what's pulling you up. That's your grace. Your grace goes up, and your gravity down into the center of the earth goes down through the bottom. So we're going to allow that golden sphere to be there. But as we start to connect this vertical circuit, we're going to allow the blue sphere of our aura, which is again from that central golden sphere, extends out about maybe, I don't know, 4 to 6 feet in every direction. So you have like an 8 to 10 foot sphere all in all around you that you are within. And there's 2 more circuits now we're going to work with, called the thrusting channel and the belt channel. And the belt channel starts at the right where the belly is, and it spirals up clockwise up through the top of your head, actually surrounds your body and goes up above your head, and then it spirals clockwise down around your body, down around your feet and down into the earth. And the thrusting channels are like one to the left side of your body, within your body, one in the middle of your body, one to the right of your body. Then the entire length of that spiraling column. So that's how we move the energy up to the higher, is in a clockwise direction up. And then if we want to move it down to the earth below us, we move it in a clockwise direction down. And so we're actually now energetically tuning into the gift energies. And also throughout the blue sphere. So however much the blue sphere extends, that's how far your spiral goes up and down, and you're thrusting 3 thrusting channels, which are just vertical, like tubes, one in the, like right through your left nipple going straight up and down, one right through your right nipple going straight up and down, and one right through the center of your sternum going straight up and down. Those are the thrusting channels. So as you breathe in, you can pull it up clockwise above, and as you breathe out, you can pull it down clockwise down into the earth if you want. So you can start to see how this, and as you do that, you can imagine that the golden sphere, whatever is there, starts to now expand beyond the golden sphere in kind of like rings, spherical rings coming out from the golden sphere out into the blue sphere. And as it does so, and as we do that breathing and go up and down in harmony with the expansion of that energy. I know it sounds a little technical, but just have fun with it, because it actually flows this way. We can tune into the gifts now. And what we're going to do with the gifts tonight, first of all, before we do anything, is we're going to tune into all of each other here through our hearts, as we always do at the gift level. And we're going to open up tonight not just what we've been doing in this space, but what we've been doing throughout Vegan World 2026 and all our activities, and through Radish and everything that we've been doing, where we've been applying our goodness into the world with our intent. So that's where we're going to come from now. And it's not so much that you even need to say what your specific contribution is. You can even say the ones you've seen come out of our collective workings together that you enjoy the most. Because it really doesn't have to be on the personal tonight. It can really be about the collective. It can be about what you appreciate the most. And again, I'll start. And the one that I find the one I've really appreciated the most is probably innovation. I've noticed that it just, every single person is coming into the space with a unique contribution they're making that just seems to add to the richness of everything that all of us are creating and participating in. And there's a kind of, how should I say, well, there's a new type of leadership that's coming too, that's not about being the boss. It's just about standing in your own authority and inventing yourself in a way that you feel is most beneficial to the whole. So you may have that leadership for just that moment that it's needed for you to be the voice, to connect maybe two different pieces of information, and you're the bridge, that as an example. And then it literally moves through the chain of being in our interconnectedness through their own unique initiative, starts to enrich the space with their intuition, and they start to share, you know, the intimate details of their own creative process and how it can impact the group in a positive way, and maybe even inspire, not even intentionally, but maybe just naturally inspire other people in ways they didn't realize that inspiration could come into the areas that they have understanding in. And I feel it really is this incredible adventure of our humanity that's focusing on our strengths. It's really developing our mindfulness. It's allowing us to experience truly what freedom is, and always freedom is the other side of the coin of responsibility. Well, how much responsibility do you want to take? There's your freedom. And just how beautifully the group remains in equilibrium. And I think that comes through just deep respect that everybody has for each other. That seems to create an incredible equilibrium and keep things in balance, because nobody's overstepping anything, because there's no point. Everybody's given the space to step, so there's nothing to overstep. And so I just see an incredible integrity growing within all of us, and a deepening sensitivity and that's just and while I was doing that, I was also remembering the vertical column and the blue sphere and the golden sphere and all those things, because it really helps if you keep your energy moving intentionally while you're sharing it. At least what I notice is that it will start to take you after a while, and you can find yourself not so much searching for what you want to say or digging for what you want to say, or being overloaded by what you want to say. And I'm not saying anybody's having that, but it feels just very light and effortless. And what comes through seems to come through without even really having to reach for it. It's just there and comes. It's just available. So that's why I'm introducing these internal arts energy practices, which are really cool ways to augment and expand what we're already doing, because it's all interconnected. Good evening, Ray. Glad you could make it at this time. I've introduced a lot of new concepts and practices, some internal energy arts practices, into what we're doing tonight. Maybe later you can go back and watch the beginning of the video to see, because everybody's actually doing some exercises to circulate their energy internally in specific ways, depending on whether we're working with the shadow of the gift. And so right now I just shared my gift, and anyway, at some point you can just feel free to share your gift. The energy will carry you whether you have the energy practices or not. And if you're here for the rest of it, you'll at least be introduced to the Siddha energy practice, and you can participate in that. And then when you go back and see the video later, it'll make sense to, because there's 2 other energy practices, one for the shadow and one for the gift that we're already working with, and with energy spheres of different sizes that kind of just help us to stay centered and kind of bathed in a kind of very supportive field of consciousness, I guess you could say. Anyway, so welcome, Ray. I'm glad you could make it. I just finished sharing my gift, so I'm going on mute, waiting for whoever's next. I have the chart up because tonight we're just allowing everybody, instead of going through your own personal shadow gift and Siddha, we're looking at humanity as a whole and what's impacting each of us the most, and which shadow, and that's what we already did, which shadow was hitting us the most about the state of the world right now and the collective consciousness of humanity that we're living in. But when we went to the gift, I shifted into more about the gifts that are coming out in Vegan World 2026 and groups such as this one and other groups, and the kind of things we appreciate most, not necessarily about ourselves, but it could be ourselves, but also about what we see in the group gestalt dynamic as a whole, what gifts we're starting to see being evolved through our sharing together. And that's kind of what I was just sharing. So I tuned you in as much as I could. It's not a personal focus tonight. It's a collective focus. And at the gift level, it's specifically about Vegan World 2026 and the gifts we're seeing and sharing together, and just, you know, doing a free commentary on it. So I'm going on mute for whoever's next.
I'm going to jump in if I may, because what's coming to me, Dharmendra and everyone, is this funny thing about time. And I really wasn't carrying a lot of shadow for today, but I guess I was. But there was this backward thing. So I carried, I guess, the shadow is there, but today I shared the gift in front of the shadow. So on my drive around the daily business, I suddenly felt the world connect with me and open up and bring in a huge sense of just awe and gratitude. And so going through the process with you, Dharmendra, just now with all of us, what I got was levity, although that's not on the list, but and I got the word creative imagination.
It is lightness, 30. Look at 30, lightness. That's levity.
I did not see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's this weird thing of time. It's like driving through my past, if you like, because I am me, but I'm also always connected to the universe and the world around me. So there's not that separation, actually. So what I'm experiencing is me, and it's not me. You know, it's a greater world around me. So I'm just getting this force. Maybe it's just a sense of appreciation and gratitude in the moment by looking back at the past and being in the present. And then there's the future, kind of recognizing that forward movement into the future to have gratitude, which brings us back into the heart, back into a state of love. And what you love, you will work towards taking care of and saving. The word creative imagination is coming to me because I so appreciate everyone's creative imagination at this time, in all of you, the Vegan Collective, and people around me, friends, colleagues, people I meet. Just they're envisioning this new way of being in the world, this new way of doing things, and this connecting together through our creative imagination to create with this sense of awe and with this sense of gratitude and a sense of love. So that's where I'm at with the gift.
Beautiful. And imagination, the gift of the 64th Siddha, which is actually, even though it's at the end, its title is Before the Beginning, which is a funny title for something at the end. And creativity is actually, even though you don't see it over here in the first Siddha is creative and things. So you're literally going from before the beginning to the beginning of creation and literally describing in what you just said, a very beautiful way that it actually goes, that it actually works. We've reached the end of an old process, and we're before the beginning and entering into a new period of creation over here in the first sit-up. So that's always nice to see, when just spontaneously you can tell how attuned you are, because I mean, anybody can tell how attuned they are, because it actually follows the way of nature and how nature actually works. So it's nice when it can come out uncontrived and it's just natural, and it just means you're in tune with the forces of nature and how they're working. So I always love when that happens, and it happens a lot actually in these kind of settings. So we are all very becoming very sensitive and attuned to things greater than us, and how to share that with everything around us. Beautiful.
This is Patricia. I'd like to share. Deeply appreciate everything that everyone said so far. I feel really connected and present and grateful, because the experience now seems like it's an extension of just about everything I've experienced since I've entered this space of Vegan World 2026. I was watching the very first VCI meeting and listening to it today. And I just felt like the gift was flow. I don't know, it was in mutual respect. And I deeply enjoyed how Jamin, how he facilitated all these people who had, I mean, basically come in just with their full hearts and their gifts, and he empowered everyone. Everyone was honored. I delighted in the way that, even though in some ways the meeting was chaotic in that there was no agenda that was clear to me, yet everything took place that needed to take place. I got to know people who I've gotten to know better, like Jamin and Anne and Benjamin, Suzanne, Nancy, and Jamin's two friends. I'm forgetting their names, I'm sorry. I will get them.
Nolan and Evan.
Nolan and Evan, yeah. So it was like I just was basking in a glow of history unfolding. And so grateful that we're recording these meetings because someday people will, and still, even me, I'm catching up since I've only been involved. I guess it's been a couple of months. Maybe I'm not, I guess I got in near the beginning of like when Ray came in, and so I will conclude by saying the shadow that I experienced, I believe that as people see this new way of being, their pride and arrogance and disrespect will dissolve as they enter the realm of this mutual respect, mutual regard, love for each other and all of life. Thank you.
Now that was a very gracious rendition of the collective vibration that's growing with all of us here. That I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Throughout all of Vegan World 2026, it's here too. But I just always want to include everybody. And Radish also, and everything else that's growing out of and interconnected through all of this.
Thank you for that, Patricia. That was really, really touching. That really spoke to me a lot. This feeling of this gift of love and sort of the absence of, I'm not sure what this gift is, where I just noticed there's an absence of rivalrous dynamics that occurs in these gatherings, which is, it's sadly like foreign to me. It's been very rare in my life that I've come together in a group and gotten to experience cooperation and patience and like a group intention to get along and actually be heard. And I've noticed this, like initially it was something that started touching me kind of in my shadow region, where I was noticing that I was being a little bit more gracious with myself after spending more and more time in these meetings, and that I wasn't so insistent on being right or wrong within like my heart. There wasn't as much rivalry going on, and recently I've been noticing that just as this has been growing and unfolding, I've noticed kind of my like reach as far as my ability to take in the world around me into that non-rivalrous place, that place of graciousness and compassion and love. I've noticed myself opening up to situations that may have appeared as in conflict with myself in the past, or like they were trying to hurt me. Like for like just a little example of where I noticed this change in myself. I work at the pizza place, and the other day, a woman came in, orders a pizza, and an hour goes by, and her pizza wasn't made. We lost her ticket for the pizza. And the first time she comes up to check in is an hour later, and she's clearly upset and just wants to get refunded. And it was actually, this is the first customer I've had there that was just really like, she just felt very like attacked personally by this happening to her. And normally that type of interaction would make me feel really flustered, and I feel like I need to either be for or against it, either kind of groveling or a little bit like distant and cold about it. And I allowed myself to kind of just like hear her out and not be for or against the situation. And I just noticed this, like, I don't know, it just felt like my heart was allowed to just like keep beating throughout that. And I'm noticing that in my life, it's almost like this circle of compassion is starting to grow, and I'm starting to realize that this can be the reality for future generations to come, is one of where listening is the norm and concern and consideration for those around us is the norm. Yeah, and like Patricia said, it's so nice to watch history unfolding here. Yeah, that really just makes me emotional, because I'm so inspired and glad to see that the world can be like this.
All I can say to that is hallelujah.
Yeah, I have something to share along kind of similar lines. I find myself inspired by Evan playing off of his words. Is that as we've been putting out our intention that the world come together as a collective and a collective intelligence, we've been getting more and more connected to other people who are working along similar lines. And I just really feel us coming together now. I feel humanity coming together now as we get closer and closer to the block. So excited for humanity to finally come together in conversation. And this, I guess, maps to the gift, you know, coming out of the shadow of indifference and self-obsession, coming into the gifts of, you know, communion and love and connection, and just a letting go of where we came from in terms of all this brokenness and dysfunctionality. Like you let go of a bad dream and just shake it off and move forward into a beautiful new day. That's just kind of how it's feeling. Like we're like almost there is how it feels.
Very nice progression. Everybody's, I love it when people start getting inspired and spring off of other people's insights. So that's really what this gift phase is about. And it's nice to see it start to happen on its own, which means it's starting to come to fruition and mature and be what the actual gift vibration is all about. We all just are sparked by all of us, and we start to lose those boundaries and artificial separating fantasies that were conditioned into us at a young age, so that the world we live in could function the way the world we live in wants us to function, rather than to function as free, spontaneous, intelligent beings capable of transcending boundaries and you know, interconnecting in all kinds of ways that are really much more about the gift and our genius and our beauty and our flowering, as opposed to our you know, our island tendency of separateness and look at me and I'm at the top of the heap and I'm the best of the bunch and I compete to win so I can stand on top of everybody, blah blah blah. So it's really beautiful to see it, because that's the only way it can happen and spark is when we start to lose the boundaries and start to connect through our heart, and everybody just start to acknowledge the fact that not only do we have gifts, we can see gifts, support gifts, and be inspired by each other's gifts, and continuously open our gifts and enrich each other.
Dharmendra, could I just say something that's occurring to me as you're speaking? What I'm really, really enjoying while I'm listening to all of you is I'm really seeing and hearing everyone's unique essence. Like I can hear it in tones of voice or the choices of words or the way someone processes their speech or uses their hand gestures. It's like there's this beautiful diversity of uniqueness that's just wonderful to watch. Oh, Dharmendra, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you for pointing that out, Melissa. That's another quality of the gift level, is this creative genius that comes out in this essential uniqueness that we all share. It's that's another beautiful thing about as this starts to catch hold of us and starts to generate electromagnetically through our auras and energy fields, and starts to inspire the cells of our brains into imaginative thoughts, and our nervous system into a much lighter frame of mind and energy experience, and just kind of relieves our body of a lot of tension as we can release our creativity in the space in the way we were designed to at the gift level. So thank you, as always, Melissa, for giving some form to the salient, some of the salient aspects of the areas we're always, whatever we're traversing at the time, in a really artistic and eloquent way. And just for fun, I've switched to a more visual thing of the spectrum of consciousness, and you guys can keep going, but I'm just going to slowly go through the I Ching pictures. I think you're going to love this, Melissa, if you haven't seen it already. But these are all 64, not in word, not in analog, but in pictographic. So, and I'll just let each one has 8, so I'll just let each one hang for a few minutes. There's no words like this, it's just pictures. But each one is numbered, and it's the exact same numbers as the ones here. And maybe at some point I'll put all these words in there. But so as we carry on and sharing the gifts, I'm just gonna show you guys what the visuals look like of all these I Ching that we've been working with in an analog verbal way. But the numbers there, those are the same numbers as the ones we're using in the chart. Same exact numbers. And these are the hexagrams up here. And these are the astrological signs they're actually in. And you'll see that there's several in each one, because they only occupy 5 3/4 degrees, not 30 degrees. So there's several of them in each one. And these are all the heavens sequence, the sequence of heaven, which means heavens in the lower 3 are solid lines, that's heaven. The upper 3 are all changing. Those are, depending on what it is, different hexagrams. So just enjoy the visual as we carry on with our, whoever wants to share their gift next. I'll just sort of give us a moment on each one of these so you can get a hit of what the visuals look like.
Are these your drawings, Dharmendra?
No. These come from, when I was living in Italy, there was a visual I Ching that came out a deck, and I just happened to be lucky enough to be living in Italy when it came out. And so I've had this for like, geez, 20, almost 30 years. And I put it in this form, this arrangement I did, yes. But these original little cards here were in a deck. The deck I don't have anymore. This is what I did with it. I turned it into this. So the collage is mine, but the cards are somebody else's.
And what are the astrological symbols there?
Well, this. Do you see my arrow?
Yeah.
That's Sagittarius. This is Virgo.
Oh, Virgo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just that they're in those signs, these particular, and I mean, you can get very technical. I could tell you the exact degrees, and I have a chart for it, but there's no point. This is more about just sheerly enjoying the visual. Like, just to give you an example, this one right here, the 34th hexagram, the shadow is force, trying to force things. The gift is strength, when your inner strength comes out, and the siddha is majesty. And the way the guy who creates the Gene Keys talks about it is majesty is what caused our spine to get vertical. Because it's a very physical, sacral, it's the most powerful. This one in particular, the 34th, is the most powerful gene we have in terms of just raw energy. So that's just to give you an idea of one of them. So I'm just going to circulate through them as you guys, if somebody else could open up their gift. Hopefully you can just spontaneously, like Jamin did. You don't have to go off the chart. I prefer it when you're spontaneous. I just use the chart for just to give you some inspiration, and it helps with the shadows. But as far as the rest of the gifts and the siddhas, you can just, being spontaneous is the best. So eventually, I guess I should post this to Vegan Synergy Meditation so you guys can have reference to this too. And then you can connect the numbers with the numbers in the chart so you can see how that works. Who else would like to share their gifts of their experience of Vegan World 2026 and Radish.org and all the beautiful things that we as a collective have been sharing and growing into? What gifts would somebody like to unveil of their heart in our connection together? All right, well, I guess we'll just go through the pictures, and I guess that's a bit distracting. But that's all right. We can go through the pictures in silence for a moment and then get back to the sharing. But as you can see, the theme on the bottom is always the same. In this case, it's thunder, and on the top, it's changing. This is thunder under heaven, thunder under earth, thunder under wind, thunder under thunder, so double thunder, which the three things are agitation, initiative, and awakening. This is thunder under fire, thunder under water, which is always like a ravine or a ravine. This is thunder under lake, so it's a path leading into a lake, and this is thunder under mountain. Just so you can see that the one on the bottom always stays the same, the one on the top is always changing in the original order of the I Ching as it goes throughout the year. Yes?
Could you comment on number 3, thunder underwater, a little bit more?
Sure, that's difficulty in the beginning in the original I Ching from China, the hexagram. In terms of the shadow of the gift in the siddha, it's chaos, innovation, and innocence. And it's connected to your hara, your tantien, your life force center. It's the very center of your life force center. It's the most individual expression. It's not a collective expression. It's an individual expression of your life force energy.
That one popped out to me. If I can just share it really quickly.
Perfect. Yeah, we can do it this way through the visual one. Sure, why not? Maybe it's even a better way to do it. Go for it.
Well, because when I was in India, I was in Dharamshala and I was climbing up this ravine, which it's this ravine and there's a stream that's going down it, and I was just kind of witnessing all of the garbage that people had left there. But the further up I was going, there was less and less garbage, and it was kind of exciting because I'm just climbing up rocks all the way to get to just keep following this weird cavernous ravine. But then I got to a certain point where it was really foggy and starting to get kind of mysterious, and then there was like thunder. Thunder happened, and it was like shaking the earth and the water, and it felt like it was just emanating from the mountainside. And then slightly startled, I left, but I don't know. I just like wanted to come out of me. That reminded me of that experience.
Wow, that was a really actual, like, experiential elaboration of that hexagram. That's really cool. Because when a path leads into a ravine, it could be very chaotic, you know, and it could be very thunderous and unstable, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to get really innovative to negotiate your way through it, you know. But ultimately, innocence, you know, the innocence of a child who just has no preconceptions and just is enjoying the sheer, you know, audacity of the journey. It gets through like a child chasing a butterfly, probably unscathed and better than anybody else, because that's probably the best way to get through it.
Yeah.
So neat. That was really cool. And that was just me getting poetic about, you know, when you using the picture and going through the shadow gift, inspired by your story, of course, because that just sort of brought it all into focus. So yeah, you know what, as far what he just did kind of opened it up in a neat way, because I know all these by heart. So if any picture strikes you and you want to go off and you want to ask me what it means, maybe that, because for him, he had an intuition, and then when I shared what it was, it worked perfect. So if anybody wants to do the gift thing through the pictures as we move on, this is the Earth sequence. The Earth is on the bottom of all the different other aspects of the natural. But it's not just natural, it's also metaphorical for spiritual, for social, for collective, for individual, for universal. It depends. You can take it anywhere you want. That's the beauty of these hexagrams. They work at all levels. So like I say, if anybody gets a hit about anyone and, you know, wants to open a gift through the poetic use of these mandalas, then that's cool too. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving along. This is the mountain sequence. This is the Wata sequence. It's a really nice one. Eventually you can learn it. If we get that far, you can also learn what your, and it's not called astrology, it's called gene keys, but you can learn what your birth sign is. Mine is this one right here, which is actually traditionally Qing. It's the army. No wonder I've been in martial arts for 50 years, but it's a bridge, and it's got water underneath and the earth above. That's the hexagram number 7 of the army. And that's, the sequence of that is, division, guidance, and virtue. And for me, division is when I separate myself unknowingly from others and isolate for whatever reason, whether it's because I think I'm better or not good enough or not the same as, or you name it, any number of divisions are possible. It's a very collective, it's a very collective, it's in a collective circuit, so it's a very collectively expressed thing too. It's also about a new type of leadership that's coming into the world that has to do with guidance. And it's a guidance that comes from virtue. And by virtue is meant that which brings out the best in others without them even necessarily needing to know about it. That's what virtue is, in my understanding. And the guidance is in simply always being willing to go first and take the lead, not in the sense of telling people what to do, but in the sense of showing by example, by being an example. So that's just one way to tell a story. Eventually, I guess down the road, we could, because you have to have your birth time and date and place and all that, then everybody has a birth. There's for every planet in your chart, there's one of these. So it's really neat because these are at the genetic level. They're not just some very collective thing that happens in astrology. Even though the astrology stuff is coming through it, it's much more specific. So it's pretty cool stuff. That's just another use of it as I'm perusing through all these, and we'll move on to the next sequence. This is the wind sequence. This one is very beautiful. 50, it's the cauldron. I always love this one. It's where all the tribal secrets of survival and all the rituals and everything that keeps a tribe alive and has gone into the making of a tribe, and all its rituals and initiations and everything. I love this one, 50. It's a very tribal cultural one, because that's a tribe. 50, the 50th is in a tribal circuit. There's collective, individual, and tribal circuits in our DNA. So this one is very tribal. It's also about custodianship and passing on the rituals and initiations to future generations. So for some reason I was inspired to speak about that, and that's all of them. We just went through all 8 sequences. So that's just the visual sense. Slowly, I want to open up more and more of this and share more and more, because it's so rich and juicy, but it's also very deep, and there's a lot, so one step at a time. Anyway, we'll go back to this one in case anybody else wishes to open up their experience of the gifts that are starting to flower in all of us through all these collective processes that we're giving birth to through us. And not to say that there aren't other collective birthings going on around the planet, but this is our unique ones. So this is the one we're giving birth to, which is kind of a related super intelligence, collective evolutionary, and something or other. It's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of pieces coming together in this. And throw in a little sociocracy while you're at it. There's a lot of pieces.
Could I share another gift? This is Patricia.
Of course. Nobody's stopping you.
Well, I'll be brief, but the mountain image reminded me of when I was 18, and that was almost 50 years ago. I'm 65. And I was backpacking in Yosemite, and at the end of the 4 or 5 day trip, I was illegally, I'm sure, camping overlooking the beautiful Yosemite Valley with my 2 girlfriends, Sue and Susan. And I had a revelation. I was an agnostic at the time, yet I distinctly heard not a voice, but it was a distinct message, and that was, you need to travel and get out of the system. And at that time, I had been going to college. I had just ended my first year of college. I was on the track to finish. I mean, I thought that was the only way I could make a living, was to go to college. I'd always planned on going to college, took college prep courses in high school. And yet, within a year, I was on a plane to Paris, and eventually, within 3 weeks, I was going overland on the Orient Express to Istanbul. taking the freak bus, as it was called, a bunch of hippies on a bus going to India. No, Afghanistan. I ended up in India. But my 13-month trip by myself at age 19 took me to so many places of suffering within myself, the deep loneliness, being away from home, and yet I was embraced by so many, especially Muslims, inviting me into their home. And when I came back on the plane after 13 months, I knew it was time to come home. I had the revelation that the only way I would be happy was to serve with joy using my gifts. And at last, all these years later, I believe I have come to a place, and in this community, I will call it, we are embracing all of Earth, but we need to belong. I feel a need to belong and feel safe and connected to community. So Vegan World 2026 is the culmination of all these years of yearning to fully give my gifts, the ones I've been developing, and to experience them as service and as being useful to help transform the world. Thank you.
Again, beautifully done, Patricia. And I could relate to a lot of that. Even the 13 months was the first time I went to India. It was for 13 months in 1980, 79, 80. So it was just interesting. You caught me right in there with what you were saying. In the interest of time, is there anybody else who wants to do a gift? Because I would like to also open space, and just so we get a sense and a taste of how that is going to unravel in relation to what we've already done tonight. I can't remember if everybody shared their gift or not. I think so, or is good that I go on. From what I saw with the thumbs up, I think we can go on. So again, with the energy circuits, there's actually 4 more energy circuits. The last axis, which is the forward into the future, backward into the past, willingness to love and be loved, expansion of our spirit into our own greatest potential, into our future, which is about the Siddha. And it's the great big sphere that extends 50 feet all around us in every direction. And it's a diamond clarity that has the capacity to synthesize many different things. It's about our brilliance and our intelligence to bring together many different things into one space, and make it work in a big way for everybody around you. It signifies endless development. And the actual circulation of energy is through what are called the yin arm and leg channels and the yang arm and leg channels. So there's actually 4 sets of channels. And these are a little, they're not like spirals up and down or tubes straight up and down or a circle running around the center of our body. They kind of wrap spiral like around our arms and legs and around our torso. And it really, you could just get creative with that, because I don't actually have, I could get it, but I don't have it here now, the actual track of that on the body. It's a little more complex, but let's just say it blends both sides of the body together and blends both the yin and the yang, the soft and the hard, the masculine and the feminine together. So it's kind of like the neutralization or reconciliation of the shadow and the gift we've already been through. And the way that happens is as we out of the gift, when we start to get a pure flow, like a wave-like flow from above and below, all of a sudden that starts to hook us into that emanation space of a siddha that hooks down through. Well, we're going to stay with our heart, and it connects into our heart and starts pulling us like a tractor beam to the source of that siddha or emanation. So then all of a sudden, with all those other ones going, we're transforming through the golden sphere right around our heart. Through truth, we're transforming the shadow, and then we're kind of like in a kind of like wave-like motion up and down. We're tracing the blue sphere of the gift, and now all of a sudden this tractor beam catches the whole blue sphere and just starts pulling us along, and all of a sudden the whole chamber of our biggest sphere, which is actually called the omega sphere, opens up. And it's like I said, it's like 100 foot across, 50 feet all around, and in that sphere we can actually literally traverse inner space, I guess you could call it, the inner space of consciousness, anywhere we want to go. And so where we're going to go is whichever siddha or siddhi is attracting us. And how we're going to tune into the siddha tonight is we're going to jump from whatever it is, the gifts we've been appreciating as a collective. Now we're going to open up into the whole universe at large, and we're going to tune into whatever it is, the movements of the stars, the flow of weather through nature, the way the structure of atoms is, or even mystical experiences you've had. What is it in the big picture of the universe, whether it's the tiny inner universe of our body or the outer universe of the great, or the collective universe we share of this planet? What siddha is encapsulated for you right now, I guess we could say would be the best time, is really capturing your sense of the highest quality that taps you into the divine or the source right now. And you can even in telling your story, like I'm not even going to try to figure that out. I'm just going to go right into being as the siddha right now, and just kind of be in awe about the fact that we exist and how we exist. And have you ever stopped and just watched this miracle of a body do its thing? We don't even have to do anything about it. It's been given to us, and it motivates and has all these cells and thinks and does all these things. And where does it even come from? I mean, it's just this fact that we are as a being, and that we can evolve, and we can share like this, and we can tune into other beings, simpler beings like animals, and find our relationship to them as custodians and caretakers, and tune into the plant world, and cultivating it and using it for nourishment, and appreciating it in that way, and in so many other ways actually with plants, not just nourishment. And then we can tune into the greater world and the stars and the sun, and what keeps everything in motion and keeps everything functioning on this planet, and the climate patterns, and the kind of beings that there must be that keep all that on course, like steering a kind of cosmic space matter with all these beings on it. I mean, just the scope of being, not just the fact that we are, but also the scope of how much there is of what there is, and just how awesome it is, and how it just takes me into a space of awe sometimes, and just thinking about what kind of being could have possibly created this immensely sophisticated and grand design of everything that we're all a part of. I mean, it moves me in the depths of my being, and it's just like, whoa. I mean, I literally feel like the middle of my being is moving when I think like that. It's just like, whoa, things are moving within me in indescribable ways when I tune into the mystery of being and the miracle of being, and the fact that we even are, and how rarely we just stop and go, how the hell did I even get here, and how the hell all of this is even happening? I mean, if you really think about that, sometimes it's just like, whoa, that's mind blowing. And when you stop and just take stock of being, and that we are. Anyway, So that's kind of the theme of how kind of, I think, a little easier way to get in touch with the siddhas is to open the scope, and you can either go micro, macro, or meso, which is the middle, which means the earth we exist on, or the universe, or you can go all three like I did. Just have fun. If anybody gets a hit too. Yes, Melissa, and okay, so just that. I know you got to be able to. You got to say something.
Okay. God, you're a hard one to follow. That was really eloquent. Thank you. I was floating around in all those words and energy you were sharing. Yeah, freedom. That's a word that jumped out at me. And I thought that's kind of interesting to have gone on this journey from oppression to gratitude to freedom. And what comes to me, or what came to me, is, well, first I saw myself like in this giant sphere, like on a trampoline, and just go boing, 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 and just this freedom of expression, of creativity, of imagination, of possibility, of kind of everything. The freedom of all new possibility was coming to me. Yeah. So it was very playful and very liberating and very fun and very hopeful and just awesome, sparkly, bouncy.
Wow, I love that. I really got into the liberating and the freedom, and it made me think that sometimes people from the outside listening to our siddha, which is really just a play, it's a lila. The word lila is a Sanskrit word that means play, directly connected to Krishna and the whole story of the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. But anyway, when you really start to get the hit of what siddhas are about and things like freedom and being, you realize that when you tap into that, that's the thing that gives us the space to do everything else. It's not about doing anything. It's about being open so that everything can get done through us. Because if we don't create that space for things to happen, nothing really happens. And that's just something I just think is such a concept so far away from the average thinking, pedestrian, unfortunately, because it's just so important. It's to create the space to be in, so that the doing of the gifts can happen and the healing of the shadows can take place through that. I'm glad I have the space to share that, and I'm glad that I was inspired by your freedom there, Melissa. And it's much more about who you are when you express. It's just the way you express it is like art in motion. So it's always, not only is it delightful, but it's very illustrative, and it's usually quite inspiring.
This is Patricia. I will share. I like to tell stories as if they have already happened, and I call it a harmony story, and I feel inspired to share going into only this Monday, because I have a meeting. I'm going to give a 15-minute presentation about the compassionate living circles that are being developed on the platform of the base camp and elsewhere. So I just want to tell you, I'm so excited because I figured out how compassionate living circles are going to help implement everything that's happening on VW 26, because I met a billionaire who wants to fund 1 million facilitators who will be trained to go into communities of faith that are receptive to things like social justice and concerned about the environment and the GBTLQ community and oppression. And they're really, these communities of faith then will be offered these facilitators who can come in, and they create circles of compassion in the church or mosque or temple or whatever the name is of a community of faith. And not only do they help that particular community of faith, but they extend out to the neighborhood and they inspire the creation of a community center, that this building that was only being used maybe a few times a week or in a limited amount, it becomes a 24-hour community center where volunteers are so inspired to come, and they're trained, the facilitators are very well trained, to come and help people heal their traumas, to become whole, to eat a healthy vegan, plant-based diet, to extend veganism, to express veganism in every area of life, so that every neighborhood becomes a thriving community where all of life is cared for. And I feel very grateful because all of BW26 is being able to pour their ideas into the training program for the facilitators who stay in very close contact, and they implement all the ideas in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, that sounds very, how should I say, expansive. And if I might even say bordering on boundless, certainly right next to compassion there. So that's a exciting development for you there. And cool. That's all I can say about that is cool. Or super cool, actually.
Yeah, if anybody hears of any billionaires, send them my way. You know, somebody might like to help.
I think if we hear of any billionaires, we're going to bring them into Radish and get things facilitated very quickly is what we're going to do, quite frankly. To be honest with you, that's kind of how I understand how it's rolling.
I know that was, let's see. Yes, I agree. If you find any billionaires, I'll send them right back.
Yeah, actually, why don't you invite that guy into Vegan World 2026, dear? That was my thought. That was my thought. Because it has to go into all of life is what it needs to do. I mean, that's what we need billionaires for right now, not for hoarding.
And I hope,
but
I hope you heard that.
Let's stay on target. I
I'll stop.
want other people to have a chance to share their siddhas before the evening is done. It's getting late and we don't have much time left. Yeah.
As I was looking over the chart here, the siddha associated with self-obsession, the gift of indifference. The siddha associated with indifference, and again, back to, humanity's indifference, just in aggregate, the siddha is mastery. And I am really inspired by humanity in the process of coming together and co-creating and applying our collective intelligence. We are going to achieve a degree of mastery. The planet is too hot. Here's how we cool it down, right? oh, these ecosystems are being destroyed. Here's how we protect them, regenerate them, heal them. Mastery, right? So, you know, going from a car that's just falling apart and has all these problems to, like, imagine a master mechanic just getting everything in total tip-top shape. So anyway, I'm just living into that siddha of mastery of saving and healing and regenerating life on Earth.
I'll tag on to that because when you bring up mastery, I always think of music and like an instrument, and how when you get a guitar, sometimes it can be daunting because you don't even know where to start. But then when you get your first couple chords down and a couple strumming patterns in, and then you start to realize that it's so boundless and so expansive. Like mastery almost, it doesn't even have a ceiling. It's like it can just keep going. And what I know about these like sort of siddha states that we're sharing in, like I know they feel really big, and that's just some part of reality that every now and then I feel I need to just like comment on. Is I'm just like, man, it's big in here, you know. There's like so much that could happen and so much that you could do, and then with that comes this sense of freedom, where I just feel like we've got big space and big time. There's lots of space, both in time and physical space, and when we start to like really get comfortable with our instruments, I think we're gonna start filling up the space, and like the music is gonna get way more elaborate than just strumming out a couple chords, because there's all this room for like rhythm and all these different key changes and stuff that you can do. It's just like, it's so expansive, and I feel as this group is growing and kind of cross-pollinating with these other groups, I feel like we're gonna get to witness this whole like lovely garden just bloom, and all these different strange, interesting strains of beans and legumes and vegetables start to be grown that we didn't even know that they were possible. You know, it's just there's so much. There's I don't know, like so much contained within a seed. Like there's so much possibility, and I feel like we're just starting to get the seed to like grow. And it's very exciting, very big.
Wow, Evan, I'm really impressed by what you just did, because you're starting to catch it. You're starting to get what siddhas are about, and you went into boundlessness, and then you went into timelessness, and you hit bounteousness. You hit a whole bunch of them, and you did it, and you really opened it up very skillfully, I thought. And then also mastery, the way you played off the mastery thing about all the skills and the tools we're going to be bringing to it, and the fact that we have to have mastery to handle those tools and use them in the correct way in the service of universal love and all of that. And it also inspired me to want to say that in the cross-pollination, and this thing is going to expand probably exponentially, probably quicker and quicker and quicker. And what I just want to say and offer to all of us here, this core group that we are, including Benjamin, because he was here earlier, and Suzanne, but she said it once, Suzanne, when we got to, I think, the siddha the first time, she said, it feels like home. And I just want to offer with all my being that this be the place of home that we always remember we can come back to, because it's going to start getting very diverse and very involving and very engaged. And I just want to always remember to come back to the touchstone of essence and the center, and the fact that we can always come here and you know, literally throw off our skins, get into our light bodies, and just hang out for a while. And remember that, because it's kind of what keeps the inner fires burning. And I mean, I feel really grateful to be you know, a voice with all this, a voice for all this. But I feel everybody's developing their voice now. We're all becoming a voice which was my hope to begin with all this, because everybody's starting to catch it and starting to catch the pieces. And I knew it would take, some time, but it's starting to happen, and we're starting to it's starting to grow as a collective now, and a kind of a unified body of distinct, exquisite individuals is how I would put it, each with our own unique light and singular expression, but at the same time, just all part of the same unified field of being consciousness that's about, establishing peace for everybody, for everything, in really savvy ways, and spreading it as far and wide, and finding as many diverse expressions of it as we can. So I just always want to I guess it's just coming home to me, haha, I didn't mean to make a pun there, but it's coming home to me tonight that this space we're creating here with Vegan Synergy Meditation is just about remembering home. And that this is the place where we can be at home if we want to be. And it's okay to be ourselves in the sense of our true essence. So I don't know. Thank you, Evan. Something you said inspired me to. It's probably your boundless, timeless exquisiteness.
Armendra, could I just add something here as well? That what the other aspect that's coming out tonight that I'm seeing are the archetypes. And when Jamin just spoke, I actually saw the Buddha archetype. This embodiment of something beyond self, and then Evan is like sprinkling pixie dust everywhere. So anyway, I think that's really marvelous that we got some archetypes activated here.
Oh, you're starting to see actually what you're starting to see are the beings that in their life forms. And of course our imagination plays with that and dresses them up, however, but I get that you're having true seeings, and you're starting, because those kind of beings are always present everywhere in the space. It's a matter of learning how to focus our vision, our hearing in new ways, in ways we didn't even imagine were possible. And once we start to learn to focus and find how to focus in very specific, very subtle, very sensitive ways, we can tune into types of consciousness. And I'm glad we get to this place where I can say it like that, because I think that's very clear to everybody what I just said. And it is possible to do that. And like I do believe you're seeing that Buddha presence, because it's everywhere. Those kind of beings are everywhere. And the pixie and the archetypes, I love the archetypes, because all of these 64 gene keys are mythologies. Each one of us, when we put them on and dress ourselves up in them, become a mythology that expresses them. So the mythology archetype, it's in the same ballpark. That's what archetypes do. They express mythologies. So very beautiful, very beautiful. I'm loving, we're opening up the Siddha level, not just in a very like giddy, celebrative way, but we're starting to get really savvy about how we see it, how we express it, and how we tune into it, and how we start to learn to focus in new ways, so our senses can actually start to pick up on these, visions and voices and presences that are always there. Yeah, it's really becoming it's starting to become very exciting for me, because this is I'm starting to get the reflections back now of stuff that I'm not saying that you guys are saying, that's opening up spaces now in very beautiful ways.
I'll just jump in here and say that there's two tracks really jumping out to me right now. The first track being from unease to intuition to clarity. And then the second track being dishonesty to intimacy to transparency. And that clarity and transparency is something I think once it's had on a large scale, which we are empowered to do, especially through the technologies we have today. Once all of the just ridiculous amount of information that's out there today is a little more, I want to say at peace with itself or something. It feels like there's just too much going on, and I think the dishonesty of like nation states is now being exposed and like coming out into the light, and more people are waking up and realizing what's going on, writing, like filming documentaries and writing articles and facilitating like a YouTube channel, and just like the transparency, it just continues to get more and more transparent, and there's like nothing anybody can do to stop that. It's just what the people are enabling to happen. And with that, I feel like there's this clarity gained that I like Jamin talks a lot about. One of his catchphrases recently is, "It's so fucking obvious." And it kind of like, I look forward to the point when a lot of these things that we're talking about wanting to manifest in the world and concerns we want addressed, once those become more
ISPO. He just did the acronym.
oh ISPO, yeah. I already feel that, like I'm trying to remember the word you've used before, Dharmendra, but kind of that flash.
Rapture?
Yeah, rapture, I guess. But that, I don't know, I associate that with, it's like when something becomes all of a sudden transparent and the clarity is there, I think, like, I've experienced that in the recent past, some handful of months ago. And I think that we're all in this place now where there's when these things are novel to people, there's this opportunity that doesn't exist once somebody's been introduced to something, and then there's a pattern set up already. Maybe there's an aversion to something set up already. And so I think the people that are completely out of the loop when it comes to any of these things that we're passionate about, there's a huge opportunity there that I see becoming fruitful in the near future, where kind of once it gets out past people that maybe they've grappled with some of these ideas, but it's almost become stale or something. And so once we get kind of past those people, especially to younger people, I think a lot of this can take off and be immediately obvious to people that haven't bought into whatever the previous paradigm or structure is or whatever. Yeah, that's really exciting to me.
Well, I feel like things will become increasingly more obvious to younger people when they're faced with the like stark, brilliant clarity of collective intelligence and like compassionate living, and then this reality where all work is done in shadows behind closed doors. It'll become very obvious which one is preferred, which one feels good, you know.
Well, the central point is that we're in touch with the essence, and the essence is always fresh. It's always ever new. It's always on the cutting edge. It never gets old. So that's what home is. That's my definition of home, is that place that's constantly opening to the new. And there's nothing else it can do. It's its nature to do so. And you can always tell a living transmission, a group of people who are participating in a living transmission, because those are its qualities. It's always opening. It's never old. It's always fresh. It's always unfolding and on the cutting edge. And it's constantly on a discovery, or it's constantly on insight. That's a great way to put it. It's constantly upon insight. So there's, if it's the first sign of something, if it's getting stale, is it's become an organization. It's become fixated into a structure, and the idea has become more important than the living, breathing reality. And that's just something I have no worries about that, because at this point we're all pretty much grounded in and in touch with that living flame within ourselves, the essence that's ever growing and ever new, and just constantly evolving. And it has to. It's its nature. It seeks out what's fresh, what's beautiful, what's inspired, et cetera, all the gifts in Siddhas. Anyway, I did want to give Ray a chance. If you're there, Ray, I wanted to give you a chance. Maybe you could go through a shadow gift Siddha sequence based on everything you've heard tonight. Just because, and if not, that's fine. Okay, go ahead, go for it if you want. Maybe because everybody else has done it long-winded, but you could maybe just string together one sequence, and the way we've been doing it tonight in the collective sense in relation to our connection in the world, and the greater universe, depending on what, the shadow gifts it up, the shadow in the world, the gift that we're all sharing, that you appreciate the most, and the Siddha that you admire, that you're in awe of the most in the big picture of nature and the universe itself. If you picked it all up and you could just sort of throw something together, just have fun, knock yourself out.
I didn't follow it too closely, but I'll give it a shot. Well, I've got a family member in the hospital, and I was kind of getting to that point where we're trying to decide each trip to the hospital whether this is going to be the last one or not. Kelly's dad has got late stages of cancer, a few different kinds of cancer. I think my shadow has been that I spend most of my life trying to think of what's in somebody else's mind rather than what's in my own. Which is I suppose a good place to be for an activist, but coming down to earth, it's sometimes hard to decide what I think about a particular topic. Because I'm so often trying to read where somebody else is in their path.
Ray, what happens when you take that tendency and put it in your heart and just and love yourself even for doing that? Where does that go when you do that? When you take what you just said, that tendency of yours, and bring it into your heart, and what's the real message there? Because obviously it's good in that. So what's the love in that?
Well, I guess the good thing is that I can walk in other people's shoes, since I seem to be trying to do it. And I'm looking for something that will comfort them on their journey. The downside of that is trying to give part of yourself when you don't really have a really close connection with that part of yourself is difficult to do. I don't think I've got that kind of relationship with my father-in-law to be able to open up in that kind of way. Neither does Kelly, unfortunately. He's a career hunter fisherman, and she's always kind of had issues of his worldview when it comes to animals, and this is far precedes her life as a vegan activist.
So what Siddha would you need most to totally give that guy what he needs in the last moments of his life? Because it really doesn't matter where he's been. Where he's going is going to blow all that away anyway, as if it never existed. Except for the really good stuff, that's all you get to take with you. So would you want, if you could have any siddha at the moment of the last time of seeing him, or if you just happen to be there when he's passing, what energy would you want to give this guy on his journey into the future? Because he's going to go into the unknown.
I just glanced at the spectrum of consciousness, and my eyes landed on presence, and that
Oh, yeah.
shadow is superficiality, and I think that's something that we're really worried about. He knows that we're vegan activists, and we joke that he's spent his whole life hating PETA, and he's pretty sure that we're minions of PETA. So, however he feels about PETA, we don't necessarily feel the same way about him. That he's a product of his environment and his understanding of nature. This outdoorsman kind of attitude towards the creation. That, I mean, he's skilled with a camera, and he's taken a lot of great photographs, and it's really sad that that's not enough. It would be nice if he just went out to catch the shot with a camera rather than a shot with a rifle.
It's interesting you said presence, because that is probably, whether we like it or not, it's probably the greatest quality of hunters, is the ability to be present in environments. That even the slightest movement, how they work, is detected. But at the same time, what a beautiful thing, because he is in tune with that presence. Maybe the way he uses it is very limited and even violent and whatever purposes, but you bringing that sense of presence to him would allow him to get in touch with probably one of the most powerful siddhas that he's had in his entire life. And Flash, it doesn't matter who anybody is or where they're at, everybody's tasted at least a siddha in their lifetime. And hunters, really, the ability to remain present is one of the most powerful qualities of hunters, which makes a good hunter. Yeah, it also makes for a lot of other goodness that has nothing to do with killing animals, but what a beautiful thing you could bring that goes beyond history or anything else, just to bring totally into the now yourself in his presence, that maybe on some level he would tune into that sense of being present and could take that quality with him where he's going. Because the best thing you could do when you leave this world is be absolutely present. There's no question about that, because that's the only way you're going to pass consciously into whatever's next. And I think that's probably the whole point of the path of awakening and spiritual development and Buddhism and all that, is to teach you how to do that. And that's why the emphasis is so much on being present, be present in everything you do in life, because that's the one quality, the most powerful quality you can take when you leave this world. Because if you can pass this world consciously, there is no better way to leave it. So anyway, that's just, it may be kind of a fantasy in relation to who we're talking about, but I don't think so. I think it's something that if you could hold that space and hold that grace in yourself when you're with him, that would be a very powerful practice of a siddha for yourself, because death always takes us out of our normal bounds anyway and takes us into siddhas whether we like it or not, because death is a siddha, and it could be any of the siddhas, just depending on where you're at.
Yeah, presence that he could feel, because entering the hospital room every time is awkward, and we always seem to manage to find a space where there's this connection. There's a camaraderie, even if we're joking around. Sometimes we're laughing in the hospital, which is a strange sound. You don't hear it coming from other rooms quite often.
How lucky are you guys? That's really cool. That's healing. To bring healing, true healing to a hospital, bring laughter. That sounds to me like a radical thing. That's cool.
Yeah, we walked away hoping that we had brightened up the day of the guy that was on the other side of the curtain. He didn't have any visitors with him, and he was, kind of skimming in and out of consciousness. I had the feeling that he was listening in, that he was, even though he wasn't even able to speak to the nurse. The nurse was asking if he wanted to write something on a pad of paper. but I had a feeling that even he had a bit of a connection with what was going on just on the other side of a curtain.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he had it didn't seem like he was ever going to be leaving that hospital. Whereas my father-in-law is probably going to be going home at least at least one more time at the end of the week.
Well, that's a really a beautiful story, and I just wanted to give you a chance to share something and contribute something to the evening, because I always appreciate your sharing. So thank you. And what I want to do at this point is, because somehow it's now become, since this will be the third time, that I want to give somebody the floor to give the final word, and I'd like to invite Jamin to be the man who closes the meeting this evening with whatever he feels like would be relevant to share, as I've done so far with Amira and Melissa, women first, of course. But now I would like to ask Jamin if he would like to bring this meeting to a close this evening, at which point I will stop recording after you, whatever it is you have to share, Jamin.
Sure. Thank you, Dharmendra, and thanks so much for everyone being here. And what we are doing here, what we're practicing here, is communion. We are coming together and sharing our minds, our hearts, our feelings, our hopes, our shadows, our gifts. And that is exactly what our Mother Earth and all of life needs right now, is for us to lead the way in communing. And I think that out of humanity communing, coming together as one, all the other creatures, Melissa and I see this every day in the backyard on the back deck. We'll often get together, and when all the crows are there, we'll just hug and kiss and share with them our love for each other and for all of them, and they respond immediately. And so I think the rest of life is waiting for us to get our act together and get ourselves together in this beautiful communion that is our birthright, and that's where we belong. Talk about home, Suzanne. This is our home, is together. And what we're starting right here with this beautiful communion that you're leading us all to, Dharmendra, this is going to be the way of the world. So congratulations and much gratitude and love to you all.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamin. Wonderful, wonderful closing words.